Donald Trump is going to put Ford Motor Company out of business. Donald Trump is going to put Ford Motor Company, the only company that manufactures the vast majority of its cars in America, is on the receiving end of Donald Trump's depraved tariff policy. And now they're not going to be able to be competitive. They're not going to be able to absorb the tariffs. They're going to have to pass them along for all the component parts, making them competitively disadvantaged. That's the problem among many with Donald Trump's tariff programs. First of all, they're based on unenforceable agreements where the counterparties, the Europeans, the Japanese, those Asian countries, are making illusory, unenforceable promises. Sure, we'll invest another $500 million. Sure, we'll encourage our companies to do that. Private enterprise is what controls this, not fiat by government. If they don't want to make investments in the United States, they're not going to make investments in the United States. If the energy products that Europe is supposed to buy, if America is not competitive or doesn't have that supply, the brokers in oil and gas and petroleum and the rest, they're not going to buy from America. And now the tariffs are showing up in the pricing. We break it all down for you on Legal AF's podcast every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network. And here's a clip.
Let's go, because we're on this topic of these foreign deals. Let's back into the tariff one also, and what happened in the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals. You've been following that hearing. I want to start with this, and then I'm going to toss it to you. An argument that wasn't made, but to me potentially could have been made, is, Popok, there actually is no deal that took place at all. Like, I mean this sincerely. A deal requires some sort of like paperwork, right? Like every time Donald Trump says, we've done a deal with Japan, or we've done a deal with the European Union or South Korea or whatever, and the deals follow the same formula now. If you agree to give Donald Trump a fake number that he can go back and say, you're investing X dollars in the United States, he gives you a 15% tariff. That's basically the deal. So South Korea says we're going to give, according to Donald Trump, $450 billion, even though their entire GDP is $1.1 trillion. Trump says Japan says they're going to give $550 billion, even though their entire GDP is $4.1 trillion. And then he says the European Union is going to give $750 billion. And then they all come out after Donald Trump does a social media post and they go, it's not a binding deal. No, maybe it's a discretionary loan. It's not a signing bonus. We're not really giving this money. That's not happening the way Donald Trump does it. And there'd be one way to resolve all of this, Popok, right? If there was paperwork. I mean, I always tell our viewers, just think about it. When you do a rental agreement, or if you're leasing a property or a car, or if you have a mortgage, or if you get a credit card, whatever it is, if you get a phone, right? You have to sign an agreement, right? The terms of service for your Apple phone should not be more extensive than a trade deal between the United States and the European Union. There is no paperwork here. It's just Trump. He makes a social media post that says that there's a number, and then that they call that a deal. And then the other side doesn't even come back and really acknowledge any of the other terms. So let me start with that. But Donald Trump, throw to you, Popok, he invokes emergency powers that we're under war, basically. Like, so there's extraordinary circumstances. So he goes, even though Congress has the power, not the executive, to engage in approving tariffs, it's literally in the Constitution, because Congress previously said there may be some circumstances where like America's under attack, or there's a rebellion, or there's some big foreign, attack that Congress couldn't act quick enough. So we're going to delegate the power to the presidency in the most extreme emergency situations. So Trump uses all of those hooks for everything he does, immigration, tariffs, you name it, and says, we're under attack. We're in an invasion situation. Canada is the enemy and they're invading us with drugs, even though that's not happening. And then when you challenge it, what does Donald Trump say? You can't challenge it. This is my discretion. The executive branch determines emergencies. Judicial branch, you can't tell. You don't know that I have the CIA. I have the Department of Defense. They're the ones telling me which, Trump's telling them it's an emergency. So what happened, Popak?
Yeah, I always like the way you put it. You and I are both doing our economic analysis. I'm doing the #1 slot every morning on Legal AF YouTube channel is me doing some sort of analysis about the intersection of law, politics, and Donald Trump's failed economic policy, Trumponomics, which is what I branded it, which Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, just declared on Thursday, right before they fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner, which we'll talk about later. He declared this is now officially Trump's economy. He owns it. I totally agree. And we're going to pin it on him every hour, every day between Legal AF and Midas Touch. On the tariff side, all of this victory lap that Donald Trump keeps doing with all of these deals are illusory, unenforceable, not reduced to writing. And the other counterparty to each of the deals, which usually matters when you think there's a contract, reports back to their media that they don't have that deal that Donald Trump is talking about at all. And at best, it's aspirational. Like Donald Trump calls it the signing bonuses. Each country like Japan and South Korea, EU, we're going to put in 300 million and 500 million or 500 billion and 600 billion. It's all aspirational. They don't control, unless they're going to create sovereign wealth funds where they're going to collect money and invest, which they're not. And they're never going to collect. They don't have enough money to do that. Then they got to rely on their private enterprise. Well, private enterprise is not going to follow the fiat, the direction of the EU president or of fill in the blank president. They run their own companies. So they decide based on market conditions whether they want to invest in the United States, not because some bureaucrat who just got elected to whatever told them to do it. So that's never going to happen. Like in the EU, they're going to $550 billion worth of investment in energy products over 3 years in the United States. Never happening. The oil brokers, the gas brokers, the people that really run that part of the economy are never going to make that investment and reverse the energy flow between the two countries, which is what it would be, unless market conditions suggest that they should do that. And we don't even have enough to supply to meet that demand or that requirement. So all of that is phony. It was all EU trading magic beans for a real cow. They got a real deal. They got a real reduction in tariffs, whatever. And then the other thing that never gets talked about tariffs, and then I'll flip to the court, while the tariffs are still around, is who's paying the tariffs. When you hear Japan is paying 15% or 20%, or the EU's down to 15% or 50% or whatever the number is, you would think, and it would be, I understand why you would think this, that the country of that country is paying some sort of tax back to the United States. That's not who's paying it. The American importer with American jobs is paying that extra to import it from that country. Now, whether they can offload and share the burden along the logistical chain from the manufacturer to the shipper to the storage to the consumer, that's for another day. That's why the Fed is so concerned. We already have the bottom dropping out of jobs, completely dropping out of jobs and job creation. We have higher prices. We have GDP, gross domestic product engine, rolling backwards. And we haven't even gotten the full impact of the tariffs and pricing yet because the exporters haven't paid it yet. So when you hear that, it's just an American company importing, paying more because they just got the product from X, Y, and Z. The thing that gets a little reported, I'll do a hot take on it, is that Trump's about to put the Ford Motor Company out of business. The only American, and I'm about to head to the Midwest tomorrow, so I'm thinking about things in the Rust Belt. The only American car company, our producer Salty's going to appreciate this, that produces the majority of their cars in America, over 80%, is the Ford Motor Company. However, in order to do that, they have to import a lot of their component parts to build the car in America from other places. So they are now paying when you hear 50% on copper and 15% on this, and that's all going into a now unaffordable car that Ford is now going to have to sell it not competitively in the marketplace. So goodbye, Ford Motor Company. It used to be, Republicans used to say, pardon me, as GM goes, so does America. Well, we just killed Ford Motor Company as a result. Now, the
well,
question,
Popok, before you get into the court proceeding as well, this to me is the essence of legal AF and Midas touch, which to me, this shouldn't be a red issue or a blue issue. Sometimes when I talk about the Epstein stuff, I'm like, okay, this should just be a good versus evil issue. We shouldn't be protecting convicted sex traffickers, number one. But when it comes to the issues of the tariffs and what's going on here, I mean, Trump and the GOP say, no. It is not paid for by American companies and importers and passed to the consumer. They go, the countries eat it. And I go, what the F does that mean? What do you mean they eat it? That's just not a truthful statement. And the problem is then they get the Howard Lutnicks on, and Howard Lutnick goes, don't you love the tariffs? The tariffs here and the tariff, and you watch this sham wow style routine. And he goes, and all of the experts, every single one of them is wrong because Donald Trump is just the greatest. And he's so smart. And then, our news repeats that. That's my Lutnick impression.
by the way, I've been known to do a pretty fair Howard Lutnick impression.
I want to see it when we get back.
5 years ago, I co-founded that podcast with Ben Mysalis of the Midas Touch Network. And now we do it on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can also get a commercial-free version on Legal AF Substack, along with Patreon. We sit at the intersection of law and politics, so you don't have to. It's about an hour-long show. That was a clip. We use this to get more people to join our audience. So to help us with that, bring more people over to YouTube that are in your life. Bring more people over to the audio. If you didn't know we had an audio podcast, we do. We could use more listens. We're top 20 in all YouTube podcasts. We're top 50 in all audio. Let's get to the top 5 with your help. Keeps us on the air. Legal AF, the YouTube channel, Legal AF MTN. I curate that. A dozen or so new videos every day, including 7 days a week. Help us. If just 10% of the people who watch my videos were to hit the subscribe button, I wouldn't have to ask for more subscribers. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.